The butterfly that stamped. This is a story, a new and a wonderful story. A story quite different from the other stories. A story about Suleiman bin Daud, Solomon the son of David. There are 355 stories about Suleiman bin Daud, but this is not one of them. It is the story of the butterfly that stamped. Now listen carefully. Suleiman bin Daud was very clever. He understood what the beasts said, what the birds said, what the fishes said, and what the insects said. He understood what the rocks said deep under the earth. And he understood what the trees said. He understood everything. The Balkis, his head queen, the most beautiful Queen Balkis, was nearly as clever as he was. Suleiman bin Daud was strong. On the third finger of his right hand, he wore a ring. When he turned it once, jinns came not of the earth to do whatever he told them. When he turned it twice, fairies came down from the sky to do whatever he told them. And when he turned it 3 times, the very great angel Azrael came and told him the news of the 3 worlds: above, below, and here. And yet, Suleiman bin Daud was not proud. He didn't like to show off. And when he did, he was sorry for it. Once he tried to feed all the animals in the world in one day, but when the food was ready, an animal came out of the deep sea and ate it up. Suleiman bin Daud was very surprised and said, "Animal, who are you?" And the animal said, "Oh, king, I am the smallest of 30,000 brothers, and our home is at the bottom of the sea. We heard that you were going to feed all the animals in all the world, and my brothers sent me to ask when dinner would be ready." Suleiman bin Daud was more surprised than ever and said, "Oh, animal, you have eaten all the dinner that I made ready for all the animals in the world." And the animal said, "Oh, king, live forever, but do you really call that a dinner? Where I came from, we each eat twice as much between meals." Then Suleiman bin Daud said, "Animal, I gave that dinner to show what a great and rich king I was, not because I really wanted to be kind to all the animals. Now I'm ashamed, and it serves me right." Suleiman bin Daud was a very clever man. After that, he never forgot that it was silly to show off. And now, the real story part of my story begins. He married 999 wives, besides the most beautiful Balkis. And they all lived in a great golden palace in the middle of a lovely garden with fountains. He didn't really want 999 wives, but in those days, everybody married ever so many wives, and of course the king had to marry ever so many more just to show that he was the king. Some of the wives were nice, but some were trouble, and the terrible wives quarreled with the nice ones and made them terrible too. And then they all quarreled with Suleiman bin Dawood, and that was terrible for him. But Balkis, the most beautiful, never quarreled with Suleiman bin Dawood. She loved him too much. She sat in her rooms in the golden palace or walked in the palace gardens and was truly sorry for him. Of course, he could turn his ring on his finger and call up the jinns, and they could turn all those 999 quarrelsome wives into white mules of the desert, or greyhounds, or pomegranate seeds. But Suleiman bin Dawood didn't like showing off. So when they quarreled too much, he only walked by himself in one part of the beautiful palace gardens and stayed there alone. One day, when they quarreled for 3 weeks, all 999 wives together, Suleiman bin Dawood left the palace, and among the orange trees he met Balkis, the most beautiful. And she said to him, "Oh, my lord, and light of my eyes, turn the ring upon your finger and show these queens that you are the great and terrible king." But Suleiman bin Dawood shook his head and said, "Oh, my lady and delight of my life, remember the animal that came out of the sea and made me ashamed before all the animals in all the world because I showed off. Now, if I show off before these queens, I'll be very ashamed." And Balkis, the most beautiful, said, "My lord and treasure of my soul, what will you do?" And Suleiman bin Dawood said, "My lady and content of my heart, I will do nothing like this." So he went on between the lilies and the roses that grew in the garden, till he came to the camphor tree of Suleiman bin Dawood. But Balkis hid among the tall irises and the bamboos and the red lilies behind the camphor tree, because she wanted to be near her own true love, Suleiman bin Dawood. Presently, 2 butterflies flew under the tree, quarreling. Suleiman bin Dawood heard one say to the other, "How can you talk to me like this? Don't you know that if I stamped with my foot all Suleiman bin Dawood's palace and this garden here would disappear?" Then Suleiman bin Dawood forgot his 999 bothersome wives and laughed till the camphor tree shook at the butterfly's words. And he held out his finger and said, "Little man, come here." The butterfly was very frightened, but he flew up to the hand of Suleiman bin Dawood, and he said very softly, "Little man, you know that all your stamping wouldn't bend one blade of grass. What made you tell that awful lie to your wife? I'm sure she's your wife." The butterfly looked at Suleiman bin Dawood and saw King's clever eyes, and he put his head on one side and said, "Oh, King, she's my wife, and you know what wives are like." Suleiman bin Dawood smiled and said, "Yes, I know, little brother." "We must keep them in order," said the butterfly, "and she's always quarreling with me. I said that to quiet her." And Suleiman bin Dawood said, "I think it well. Go back to your wife, little brother, and let me hear what you say." Back flew the butterfly to his wife, and she said, "He heard you. Suleiman bin Dawood himself heard you." "Heard me?" said the butterfly. "Of course he did. I meant him to hear me." "And what did she say?" "Oh, what did he say? Well," said the butterfly, "between you and me, my dear, he asked me not to stamp." "Oh," said his wife, and sat quite quiet. But Suleiman bin Dawood laughed till the tears ran down his face. Balkis the most beautiful stood up behind the tree among the red lilies and smiled to herself, for she had heard all this talk. She thought, "If I'm clever, I can save my lord from these quarrelsome queens." And she held out her finger and whispered softly to the butterfly's wife, "Little woman, come here." Up flew the butterfly's wife, very frightened, and Balkis told her in her soft voice, "Little woman, do you believe what your husband has just said?" The butterfly's wife looked at Balkis and saw the most beautiful queen's clever eyes and said, "Oh, queen, you know what men are like." And the Queen Balkis put her hand to her lips to stop her smile and said, "Little sister, I know. They get angry," said the butterfly's wife, "over nothing at all. But we must quiet them. Oh, queen, if it pleases my husband to believe that I believe he can make Suleiman bin Dawood's palace disappear by stamping his foot, I'm sure I don't care. He'll forget all about it tomorrow." "Little sister," said Balkis, "you are quite right. But next time he begins to boast. Take him at his word. Ask him to stamp and see what will happen. We know what men folk are like, don't we? He'll be very much ashamed. Away flew the butterfly's wife to her husband. And in 5 minutes, they were quarreling worse than ever. Remember, said the butterfly, remember what I can do if I stamp my foot. I don't believe you, said the butterfly's wife. I would like to see it with my own eyes. Stamp now. I promised Suleiman bin Dawood that I wouldn't, said the butterfly. You couldn't bend a blade of grass with your stamping, she said. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Suleiman bin Dawood, sitting under the camphor tree, heard every word of this, and he laughed as he had never laughed in his life before. He forgot all about his queens. He forgot about the animal that came out of the sea. He forgot about showing off. He just laughed, and Balkis, on the other side of the tree, smiled because her own true love was so happy. Presently, the butterfly, very hot indeed, came to Suleiman and said, She wants me to stamp. She wants to see what will happen. Oh, Suleiman bin Dawood, you know I can't do it. And now she'll never believe a word I say. She'll laugh at me to the end of my days. No, little brother, said Suleiman bin Dawood, she will never laugh at you again. And he turned the ring on his finger, just for the little butterfly's sake, and for huge jinns came out of the earth. Jinns, said Suleiman bin Dawood, when this gentleman on my finger stamps his left front foot, you will make my palace and these gardens disappear. When he stamps again, you will bring them back carefully. Now, little brother, he said, go back to your wife and stamp. Away flew the butterfly to his wife, who was crying, Stamp, stamp now, stamp. Balkis saw the 4 jinns take the gardens with the palace in the middle, and she said, At last, Suleiman bin Dawood will do for the sake of butterfly what he ought to have done long ago for his own sake. And the quarrelsome queens will be frightened. Then the butterfly stamped. The jinns threw the palace and the gardens 1,000 miles into the air, and everything grew black. The butterfly's wife was flying in the dark and crying, Oh, I'll be good. I'm so sorry I spoke. Only bring the gardens back, my dear husband. I'll never quarrel again. The butterfly was as frightened as his wife, and Suleiman bin Dawood laughed so much that it was several minutes before he could speak to the butterfly. Stamp again, little brother. Give me back my palace. most great magician. Yes, give him back his palace, said the butterfly's wife, still flying about in the dark. Give him back his palace, and please no more magic today. So he stamped once more, and that moment the jinns brought down the palace and the gardens. The sun shone on the dark green orange leaves. The fountains played among the pink Egyptian lilies. The birds went on singing, and the butterfly's wife lay on her side under the camphor tree, saying, "Oh, I'll be good, I'll be good." Suleiman bin Dawood could hardly speak for laughing. Then came a terrible noise, for all the 999 queens ran out of the palace, shouting and calling for their babies. And the cleverest Balkis went to meet them and said, "What is your trouble, queens?" They stopped and shouted, "What is our trouble? We were living peacefully in our golden palace, when suddenly the palace disappeared and we were left sitting in a thick darkness. And jinns moved around in the darkness. This is our trouble, head queen, and we are most troubled on that trouble. For it was a troublesome trouble, unlike any trouble we have known." Then Balkis, the most beautiful queen, almost as clever as that Suleiman bin Dawood himself, said, "It is nothing, queens. A butterfly has a quarrelsome wife." And our Suleiman bin Dawood decided to teach her a lesson, for that is not good to be quarrelsome. But the queens didn't believe her, and Balkis asked them to go to the garden. There, under the camphor tree, they saw Suleiman bin Dawood with a butterfly on his hand, and they heard him say, "Oh, wife of my brother in the air, remember after this to please your husband in all things. Remember, he can stamp his foot again. Go in peace." And he kissed them on the wings, and they flew away. Then all the queens except Balkis, the most beautiful Balkis, who stood apart smiling, thought, if these things are done when a butterfly is not pleased with his wife, what shall be done to us? Then they put their hands over their mouth, and they went back to the palace most noisy, quiet. Then Balkis, the most beautiful Balkis, went through the red lilies to the camphor tree and said to Suleiman bin Dawood, "O my lord and treasure of my soul, we have taught the queens with a great teaching." And Suleiman bin Dawood, still looking at the butterflies playing in the sunlight, said, "Oh, my lady, when did this happen? I have just had a small talk with the butterfly in the garden." Balkis said, "My lord and treasure of my soul, I hid behind the camphor tree and saw it all. It was I who told the butterfly's wife to ask the butterfly to stamp, because I hoped that for the sake of the butterfly, you would make some great magic and that the queens would see it and be frightened. And she told him what the queen said and thought. Then Suleiman bin Dawood stood up from the soft grass he was sitting on and said, "My lady and sweetener of my days, I made the magic for the sake of a joke and for the sake of a little butterfly, and it saved me from the quarrelsome queens. Tell me, my lady, and heart of my heart, how did you come to be so clever?" And Balkis the queen, beautiful and tall, looked up into Suleiman bin Dawood's eyes just like the butterfly and said, "First, my lord, because I loved you, and secondly, my lord, because I know what women are like." Then they went up to the palace and lived happily.